64. Thursday, be like 56. It's a non-profit association.
The regular session for the Smithville Board of Aldermen will now come to order. We'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Normally we don't have this many people show up at our board meetings. We appreciate all of you being here. As you may note, that a majority of the board members and myself are wearing shirts, somewhat out of attire. Now, we did have one alderman that truly did not get the memo, so we apologize to him about that. And you probably figured out who that is. But
he is in the right color.
That is true. But we appreciate you being here tonight. And for those of you who may not know, we are wearing these shirts to honor a young girl in Smithville who is battling cancer, Eowyn Maines. And one of our board members challenged the rest of us to wear a shirt tonight, so we all took up the challenge and appreciate Alderman Blomker in challenging us to do that. Thank you, Alderman Blomker.
Mayor, I'm sorry, if I might, I believe one of the reasons that Alderman Blomker challenged us to do this is this Sunday is a celebration of Eowyn's 5th birthday. Yes. Is that correct? I'll let you go.
That is correct. And for those of you who have been frustrated with your city government lately, come on down Sunday and you might see a few of us locked up in the stockades. So enjoyment for kids and adults.
But not necessarily for elected officials. Thank you, Alderman Blomker. I appreciate you doing that. Our first item of business this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Alderman Booth to please lead us in the pledge. Alderman Booth. Thank you, Alderman Booth. Our first item of business tonight is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion? Alderman Blomker.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Item number 4 is the mayor's report. I have very little to report on the last few weeks. On Saturday, August 19th, and on Saturday, August 26th, I attended Hot Summer Nights, and I thought, other than our very first Hot Summer Nights, they got rained out. They were all very good events. There was not quite as many people as I had anticipated there would be, but the car show and the other venues were all very, people enjoyed it, and the people I talked to were very appreciative for us sponsoring this as a city. And then the only other item I have to report is on Monday, August 28th, I attended the Board of Aldermen work session, which all of us attended that. And that's my report. Do we have any committee reports? I don't think we do. Okay,
We did not have any meetings.
good. Item number 6, City Administrator's report. Mr. Garrett.
Yes, I have several things I'd like to add in addition to the report that you received in the packet. Over the weekend, we had some complaints beginning towards the tail end of the week and over the holiday about water quality issues. And as a result of the rapid release last week at the dam on the part of the Corps and an algae bloom die-off, it created a situation where there was a elevated taste and odor issue with the water. The staff at the water plant is well aware of it, taking care of it. I had anticipated putting something on social media on Friday. Last week we were lucky just to get a few things out. We had a transformer blow up here, and we were without electricity Wednesday afternoon, trying to get the packet out. As you know, we got that out a few hours late on Friday, later than we would have wanted to. So last week was busy. I failed to get it on social media. Came back down yesterday and got it on social media to help some folks understand where we were with it. We do have, when we have issues like this at the lake with the raw water, it creates issues for us at the plant. And again, we'll be talking a little bit about what we can do in the future to try to extend our treatment times at the plant. It's a physical and a physics thing that we need to address, and it'll be as part of an upgrade to the plant. But I extend the offer for any of you to tour the plant so that you can better fully understand what the limitations of the plant are. We still meet and exceed the requirements of DNR and the federal requirements. Sometimes it's just the aesthetic issues that we have problems with. So if anybody, I think, Melissa, did you go out and take a tour? But I would extend that offer to anybody that wants to come out and get a better grasp on what it is that is the water plant.
Steve, if you don't mind, did any of the news media contact you before they ran their stories?
There was I saw this morning, there was an attempt to contact me yesterday.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Was that relative to the water quality issue?
It was on Channel 5 and also in the paper.
Yeah, it
Bob?
just,
See, we've had this issue before, and maybe it's just every year, but I do recall seeing an explanation by Jack as comparison to Plattsburgh's water and Smithville's water, and he said that Plattsburgh has a sump on the north end, and our intake is close to the gate, right?
it is at the,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I'm wondering if maybe it should be looked at to change the intake to some other part of the lake so that we don't have this recurring issue.
That right now, any changes that we would need to make or want to make are significant changes. And if we're going to make that change, we need to look at it as in full, not just in part. So probably at a work session soon, we'll get to dive in, no pun intended, dive into water plant design.
Yeah, and I thought maybe a work session would work well.
Yeah, don't have any problem with that. It with the the issue of quality of water and a higher expectation of what that quality is going to be at the tap. And as the age of the lake proceeds, it becomes a harder and harder issue. So anyway, when we, probably not this next meeting, or not the next work session, but the one following, we can have some information about that.
Melissa?
Steve, I don't.
Oh, he'll be here too. Well, those are the employee actually of and direct responding to the city administrator. I plan to have them here, but because the entire thing's about information. But
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Garrett?
I'm not done with my report.
I don't mean to cut you off, Steve.
Community for all ages. We talked about that at the last meeting. I actually took a look at the dollar amount that we were talking about. That was well within my spending authority because we had agreed upon it. I went ahead and took that as directive, and I'm in the process of enrolling us in that program. So you'll be seeing some more information about that also in the near future. And for communities of excellence, again, this was an item that was within the spending authority of the city administrator. We did find the third member for Clay County. We wanted to move forward, and we are in the process of getting enrolled. I'm going to be making all of you copies of the framework for that program, and I believe that will be good for us as well. Hawthorne Street, the project is coming along. I believe I notified you last week that there is a need to realign the gas line that will likely result in a delay. But otherwise, the contractor's moving forward with all the other available work, and they're still doing a fair job there on that project. The water rebate policy that we're going to be talking about at the next work session, one of the things that as we delved in to that issue is that as far as the water leak policy that we've had as part of our practice for many, many years since before I came, it was inadvertently omitted from the 2015 update. So just to make sure that we have it that we will need to reinsert that into the ordinance, and that'll be part of the discussion at the next work session. A conditional offer has been made for the Economic Development Communications Coordinator with a potential start date of September 25th. We have a few things that we have to complete before I'm ready to make an announcement of name, etc. But I believe we'll have that ready for the work session. And Northland CAPS, that's the group that several high schools in the Northland participate with. A lot of kids from Smithville work with this group, and we have 3 groups working with the city. One with Detective Ford to create software for the investigation unit here in the PD, working with the city clerk on social media record keeping. The city is to keep all responses, etc., on social media, which creates a record-keeping concern. I don't want to say nightmare. These kids are going to make it be less so. So they've helped some other cities, and Linda's working with them. And they'll also be assisting the development department with GIS issues that will pertain mostly to the MS4 floodplain and storm drainage issues that we're pursuing. Also, that I don't have on the packet here, work session is Monday, and we will be having a review of the budget in association with that. So we're going to have several significant items on the work session on Monday. That's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Garrett? Thank you, Steve. Next item of business is item number 7. Alderman Booth.
I move to approve Bill number 2772-17, zoning for Deer Run Estates, second reading.
Second by Alderman Wilson. Discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
Alderman Arnold.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson. Aye. Alderman Booth.
Aye.
Alderman Blunker.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Mr. Garrett, would you please read the bill?
An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of Deer Run Estates from A1 to AR.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8. Alderman Chevalier.
Thank you. I move to approve Bill number 2773-17 to readopt the Code of Ethics, second reading.
Second. Okay.
Second by Alderman Arnold. Discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Wilson. Aye. Alderman Booth.
Aye.
Alderman Blunker.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
Alderman Arnold.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Mr. Garrett, would you please read the bill?
An ordinance to readopt the Code of Ethics that complies with Missouri Ethics Commission standards.
Just an FYI, for some of the members of our audience, perhaps, the Code of Ethics was adopted by the Board of Aldermen to ensure that we have a code, an ordinance in the city that requires elected officials and public officials, appointed members of the city staff, et cetera, on their conduct and their professionalism and their ethics. They are required by code to observe, and it requests that, or it requires that all elected officials exercise their authority in a very professional and honest capacity. And there are some, it really is good reading for those of you who would want to read the Code of Ethics for the city. I think it was when we adopted this, I thought it was very, very appropriate for us as elected officials to be held to those standards of ethics. Thank you. Item number 9, Alderman Booth.
I move to approve Resolution 531, bid number 17-14, Southwest Tower Maintenance.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. We do have a couple of comments on this particular agenda item. Mr. Tom Steckman, if you'd come and speak to the board, you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Tom
Also,
Steckman.
if you'll state your name and your address for the record.
Tom Steckman, 501 Kings Ridge, Liberty, Missouri. Born and raised in Clay County. Son was born in the hospital here. We currently, and I really appreciate it, we currently manage 5 of your water storage tanks under an asset management full service maintenance program. Have for years. I'm so close. I give the city a lot of assistance, and when they need it, we don't charge for that. Just come up and help out. We responded to the RFP. I was here for the opening of the RFP. Reviewed the numbers. We were significantly lower on the initial upfront renovation. I see here that there's an ordinance to approve somebody else who I don't think meets the program that your other tanks are on. I would respectfully appreciate if you would table that and look at it again. Any questions of me?
Not any questions by the board members?
Thank you very much.
Next we have Joel Ogle. If you'll come forward and state your name and address for the record and speak to the board.
Joel Ogle, McGuire Iron, Garden Prairie, Missouri. I do live on the other side of the state, but our company, McGuire Iron, is a 102-year-old company that we've been servicing tanks in the state of Missouri for 75 plus years. We did respond to the RFP as well. I consulted with the city plant manager and operators as to their desire and the conditions and the scope of the work. I also consulted the manufacturer of the coating system that was put on the tank, and we came up with a plan to address the condition of the tank in a plan or asset management moving forward as per the request on the RFP. I do feel our numbers actually are lower. If you look at the response on the RFP, and our plan is a full 10-year plan that covers all aspects of what was requested of us by the city employees. So I'm just here, appreciate your time, and if you have any questions of me as far as what we're proposing.
Very good. During our discussion, we may invite you to come back up and address the board.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may?
Yes.
In light of the conversation of the two, I believe that what they're talking about is something that is pretty technical and probably would be good to have a comparison, that this could be a subject for the next work session. As Mr. Steckman had suggested, that it could be postponed rather than tabled. And so that the board members could be making a decision with clear understanding. That's why we have the work sessions. I believe that Mr. Steckman's recommendation might be a good one for us to pursue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Joel, we'll call you back up. We need to talk to you. Discussion with the board. Alderman Moore.
I move we postpone this to next work session and discuss the technical issues and let everybody have a look at what is going on and what the best course of action might be.
Second by Alderman Chevalier. All in favor of postponing this discussion to our work session, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Item is postponed to our next work session. Thank you. Item number 10. Alderman Blomker.
I move to approve Resolution 532 to approve bid number 17-16, water plant basin rehab and painting.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. Discussion? Alderman
I
Booth.
just have one point. When you go through all this, obviously it is somewhat of a technical thing.
Yeah.
Is there, I just find it difficult to interpret how one company is literally half of the other companies. Is there a significant reason for that stands out to you?
Dan, you were, this is part of the crazy week. Dan was in on that. He's more the answer man on that than I.
In regards to a bid like that specifically, in the request for proposal, there's actually language that says, we would like any prospective bidder to please come out to the water plant, talk about what we need to do with our water techs and with the superintendent of the water department so that they can all have a clear understanding of what the specs are and that kind of thing for the actual physical project. Why the numbers come in so different, I can't tell you that, but they all have the opportunity to come out and see the same thing and talk to the same people.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dan? Yes, Melissa? Don't go away, Dan.
Do you know if all of
I don't necessarily know that. I could talk to Bob and get that information, but I don't know.
I believe that that the low bid did, and I believe that they all did at least have a conversation with Tex.
Okay. Other discussion? Clerk, please call a roll.
Alderman Blumker,
Aye.
Alderman Booth,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson. Can I clarify? Are we eyeing for the lowest bid? Is that what we're eyeing?
Yes.
Yes.
For the recommended bid. And I have to apologize, it's a resolution, it's not an ordinance, so we don't need a voice vote, but go ahead and continue on.
Okay. Alderman Arnold.
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
6-0.
So resolution passes. Mr. Garrett, would you, you don't need to read the resolution, never mind. All right. Item number 11. Alderman Booth.
I move to approve Resolution 533, bid number 17-17, a pole barn.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. Discussion? Alderman Arnold.
Why was there only one bid?
I can't tell you why there was only one. Just one company came through with the bid.
Nobody responded then?
I don't know. It was in all the plan rooms that all the other bids are usually in.
Okay.
Any other questions? Alderman Booth.
Just one, I tried to look it up and maybe I missed it. Do we have a policy on not having a competing bid at all? Or just move forward with it?
We've had this discussion over the years with several boards of aldermen, and in the past there have been some board members who say, well, you know what, if we only have one or two bids, something's wrong, and so we're going to force all these bids. In fact, got to the point where some of the previous board members would want certified copies with return receipts to go to the people who were bidding, and then if they didn't submit a bid, to go and find out why they didn't submit a bid. And I don't think it should be incumbent upon us. We put out RFPs and for those interested parties to make bids, and if they don't want to make a bid, or if they pick up an RFP package and they just choose not to make a bid on that, I don't think it's our responsibility as a city to go out and say, well, why didn't you make a bid, or what that is. So there was a policy for a while, but a previous board had done away with that because they didn't feel it was needful for the city to go and pursue those potential bidders and ask them why they weren't bidding. Okay. Alderman Wilson.
I guess without a
Here's Jack. Can you come this direction? So we're talking about the pole barn bid. And we had the one bid and discussion about having the only one. Pricing, and Melissa asked the right question. I'm sorry, Alderman Wilson. That I do believe that the pricing does reflect a little bit higher than what we had anticipated. We did not anticipate as much dirt work. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, because of the elevation of where it's going, similar to the other one we put in out there. Flood insurance stuff requires us to build the base elevation 1 foot above the base flood elevation, which is probably out there. It's going to be a 4 or 5 foot raise, and it's got to be structural fill because you're going to put a building on top of it. You can't just put any kind of fill. It has to be compacted in to raise it up so that when you build the building, it doesn't sink. So that's the substantial difference in price.
Now, if the bid was awarded, does that allow staff to go back and work with the contractor on possibly a better price?
Ultimately, since there's only one bidder, it doesn't get into the any of the problems with bid shopping, etc. It allows you to negotiate. We have that in general in our bids, that if there's only one bidder, that it can be adjusted depending, if there's things we can cut, if there's things we can cut, things we can adjust, work that can be brought in-house to help. Yeah, we can ask them for it. Yeah.
Because I just noticed also.
Okay, yeah.
Which is about 2.5% difference on the
I'm sorry,
estimated.
Well, his is 195,000, but on our
That's probably associated with what we call a force account. If there's changes, issues, problems, we've got a little bit of room to go ahead and do it without coming back for a new ordinance in front of or a new review on, and that's probably a 5%. It's not even 5% if it's 95 to 99. Sure. And that's ultimately,
Okay. Well,
yeah.
and-
Now, when you break it down, they're not going to have it between labor and materials or how they do that.
Right.
They're going to have walls, grading, that kind of a breakdown. Right. Because, and the reason generally they don't like doing that is because then it allows any other bidder in the future to come see how they break their stuff down. It gives somebody a potentially competitive advantage in the future. But they do have, here's what the grading cost would be, here's what the concrete cost, the building installed, all that.
So the question I have, I know you want some detail and understand that. Would the board like staff to negotiate and discuss this with the loan bidder and see what number we can come back with?
It's up to members of the board. I would suspect if the board chose to postpone this, so we can do that and not vote on this evening, that's up to the board. Alderman Blomker.
I move to postpone this discussion and allow staff to get a little bit additional information, discuss at a work session, and handle it at our next meeting.
Second by Alderwoman Wilson. Further discussion? All in favor of postponing this to our next work session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion.
I said no.
Okay. Motion carries anyway. Item number 12. Alderman Blomker.
I move to approve Resolution 534 to approve bid number 17-18 for audit services.
Second.
Second by Alderman Arnold. Discussion? All in favor of approving Resolution 534, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item of business, we have public comment, and I've received a couple of public comment cards here. First of all, we'll hear from Joe Buchanan. If Joe is here, if you'll come forward and please state your name and address and address the Board of Aldermen.
My name is Joe Buchanan. I live at 237 Stonebridge Lane, Smithville. I am here to represent the homeowners of Stonebridge. This last rain we had, 30 units were flooded. We were unable to get flood insurance since we are quote-unquote not in a flood zone. So the cost of replacement is up to the individual. We've had loss of cars, appliances, furniture, as well as personal items that cannot be replaced. Excluding the cars, the individual cost could be approximately $10,000. I don't know that exact amount. Stonebridge was conceived in 1994. The developer created a retention pond for the use of Stonebridge. At that time, and many years after, the design for the water flow was adequate. Since then, the school has increased in size and other developments have taken place, and all of it flowing into the pond, creating flooding of our homes. We have 4 intake culverts and only 3 outgoing culverts. On the northeast side of the complex, we have 2 buildings that back up to the school property, which flows down to one of the culverts and into the pond. They also have, the school has coming down from the left and coming down from the right, which cannot handle one culvert. Because of the expansion of the school lots, the athletic fields, and there's more runoff, these units have flooded 4 to 5 times in the past since 2008. And it doesn't even have to have a hard rain. People are buying sandbags to try to protect their property. Then on the southwest side of the complex, we have 2 buildings that back up to commercial, 169 and 92 highways. There's 3 culverts that flow into the pond. New developments such as the daycare center, the church, Kubota, Kindred parking lot, widening 169 from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, and the extension of Stonebridge has created those buildings to flood at least 3 times. Then approximately 4 years ago, the city had an exposed sewer pipe, and in finding that, they tore out the box culvert we had and replaced with 3 flanged culverts, which the flanges on the culverts collapse every time it floods. The placement of these culverts has changed the water flow and causes another building to flood. And since then, that area has flooded 4 times. There has been no consideration with all the new growth in the last 7 years. These actions have caused inverse condemnation. This has also diminished our property values. We would like cooperation in preventing any future occurrences and compensation to homeowners for damages. We have consulted an attorney and will be consulting an engineer also. Thank you.
Next, we have Wendy Claypool. If you'll please state your name and address for the record, and then address the Board of Aldermen.
Certainly. Good evening. My name is Wendy Claypool. I live at 113 Amaryllis Circle in Cedar Lake Estates. My issue's not quite as severe as theirs, but my question was, part of Second Creek has been repaved, and didn't know if there's certain guidelines, timeframes after the repaving is done, when the striping or marking of the road should be done and completed. It's approximately about a half of a mile that was repaved, and since the number of cars that travel that road, now that school's back in session, the little temporary markers they put to divide the road, the majority of them are gone. So I have called. The answers I got from City Hall I was not overly pleased with, so that's why I'm here tonight. I've been told they don't have any funding and that it won't be done until next spring. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. That's all the public comment cards I have. We'll move on to item number 14. I'll entertain a motion. Alderman Booth.
Move to approve the 2018 schedule of fees.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. Discussion? Alderman Moore.
Actually, this is a question I had last year or the year before. Sunday sales, additional fees, $300. Is that really necessary? I'm not sure what the history of that $300 fee is for Sunday liquor sales, but I suspect it came about when the Missouri killed the blue laws and allowed Sunday liquor sales, and this was a city attempt to reduce the amount of liquor sales. Is there any reason why we have an additional liquor fee for Sunday sales?
I'd have to check into it, but I believe that is based upon state law, that Sunday sales is a separate issue, and then they have a separate licensure. Now, as far as the cost, I'm not sure if that's set by the city or if that's set by state law.
Oh,
I'd have to check into it.
Now, that is a yearly fee?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can check that, and obviously if we can provide that information if necessary. If the board chooses to approve this schedule of fees this evening, we can always go back and make an amendment to that to change those Sunday fees if the board so chooses to do that.
Okay. So that Sunday liquor sales fee, that's on top of other fees that they're already paying as well?
Yes, as according to state law.
Yep, and I believe it is state law that
Yeah,
requires the collection of fees
like it
for
either.
Sunday sales.
So
We
you
will
could pay-
check that.
I'm sorry. You could pay $750 a year if you had, wait a minute, you can pay $750 a year, you'd have $300 Sunday sales, and then if you have the intoxicating liquor by the drink, that's $450. So it'd be, your fee is $750 then? Your annual fee for that, right? Just,
You would pay $750 for 2 separate licenses.
you're right, that's what I mean, yeah, sorry.
Did you want to, do you have any more other questions or items?
No, I think my comments would be the same as Wayne's. I don't understand, I think it's an old archaic law, but if it's state law, it's got to be done. But if it's not state, and it's something that we've had here for a while, I think maybe it's time to
Yeah, the framework is state law, and it's archaic on the part of someone else. So
Yeah.
We handle our archaic just fine, but this is.
Well, maybe we should also look and see, is it $300, is it $1? You know, what's the requirement? So, I mean, I don't need an answer now.
We can review that. I would ask that, so that we can fully understand where we're going with the schedule of fees in light of the budget. If we could pass that, we could take a look at that specific issue, and if that's something that you'd want to look at, we can address that specific issue.
Yeah, because, I mean, we don't want to dampen business in this community, restaurant business especially, so.
Well, we'll take a look. We could be happy to take a look at it. This has several other items, though, several other fees attached to it.
Okay, thank you.
Those fees also go to the county and the state equally, and separate for Sunday.
So, just for some information, are you saying that you pay both those licenses to the city of Smithville and to the county? And are they all the same rate?
I'm not sure about, I can't think of the county, but pretty much, yeah, I know the state's as well.
I think they're all clear $750.
Interesting. Well, that's certainly something from our perspective that if, as a city, we choose to alter those fees as a board to lessen the impact to our local restaurants, because I know many businesses have severe restrictions and or fees imposed upon them by other government entities other than the local city entity. So that's certainly worthwhile.
Pardon my interruption, I was just commenting that
That's okay.
the board knew that those fees were paid on 3 levels. We're not making a statement about one way or the other.
Very good. Well, we appreciate the information, Jonathan. Other discussion on the schedule of fees? Okay, all in favor of adopting the 2017-2018 schedule of fees as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please say no. And we will certainly, for the interest of the aldermen and those in the audience, we will certainly take a look at those fees and examine those carefully. Thank you. Alderman Blumker.
I move to approve Amendment 1 to Authorization 79 regarding the downtown streetscape.
Second.
Second by Alderman Moore. Discussion. Alderman Arnold. We have a public comment. Hold on, Alderman Arnold.
Real card.
Normally, our public comments cards, we ask that they be given to our city clerk prior to the beginning of the meeting, but we will allow this time. Jeff Becker, if you want to come and address the Board of Aldermen relative to the streetscape plan.
I'm Jeff Becker, 1406 Second Creek Road, Smithville, Missouri. I've worked with the citizens on our streetscape planning process, and a couple things I'm curious where we're at on it. I see this is a discussion about extending the scope of the plan and the costs involved with that, but we have several downtown businesses have assumed that this project has just died in one way, because we haven't heard anything from anyone suggesting that it's moving forward when initially it was planned to start at the end of this time this year. And then also in that process, thanks to the aldermen who supported the downtown plan and that discussion. And I just wanted to pass out, after the work session meeting with HDR last time I spoke with a few of the HDR employees, and they kind of inferred that they're still planning 11-foot lanes. And I would like to hand you a little information about 10-foot lanes and why, as a community, the downtown businesses ask that those lanes be designed with 10-foot widths as opposed to 11-foot widths. There's numerous reasons, but I just put a few of them down here and some examples of other cities, both in our area and around the region, that have used 10-foot lanes and enjoy the benefits of those lanes. So can I pass that out to you guys? Is that okay?
That would be fine. Just as an FYI, the purpose for these engineering authorizations is, as the board discussed this a few months ago, the board members wanted to, they have not finalized any formal plans as far as what the plan of the streetscape will be, as far as what revisions or anything like that. What the board wanted to do is to have our engineers look at expanding the streetscape project up past Bridge Street as well as further down toward Heritage Park. And so as far as any final plans, it's not died on the vine. We would have loved to have started construction by now, but we want to make sure we do this right. And we have, because of the scope of the additional property we're looking at to extend this initial project, our engineers have taken some time to look at that, and this is to authorize them to fully engineer that. And so no decisions have been made as to what the final plan will be. It's simply to authorize the engineering to expand that and look at that.
And that's my understanding of it as well.
Right.
It did mention a couple of things in the new agreement, or the amendment to the agreement, that the engineering firm will only meet with citizens, I think, a maximum of 2 times or up to 2 times, and a number of things like that. I wonder if our Board of Aldermen would consider amending that so that they make sure that as we invest in our downtowns and our communities and how it affects our businesses and our residents, that they ask that the people we hire are definitely serving the interests of the citizens that are mostly affected by this project. And if it takes more than 2 times, that we not be limited to just 2 meetings.
So what would your recommendation be, Mr. Becker?
I don't know that I would put a number. I certainly wouldn't say more than, I know it's not an infinite number, but I think the best practice would be to make sure that they meet till there's a acceptable satisfaction amongst the citizens. So maybe that's 4 times, maybe it's 8 times. I don't know what process they're going to go through. So the example might be, looking back at the first half of this agreement, was they met with citizens one time and citizens gave response, and they went back and proposed a plan that had very little of what those citizens asked for. So
I don't mean to be contrary, Mr. Becker, but those responses were with those citizens that were present, and much of it was exactly what they.
I wonder if we have the documents that the group of us sat around in this room and wrote on their printed maps what kinds of things that we asked for, if those are
Anyway, I understand your point.
So my point is to get it right for a long time for the sake of the citizens. And if the engineers have to stretch their experience a little bit and do things different than they used to do to accommodate, that would be...
and again, I don't believe it's a matter of a finite number of time necessarily. We did invite all members of the public. We posted on our website, on our Facebook, etc., and we invited members of the public to come down. Alderman Arnold, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I just had a question. When you talk about citizens, is that like 5 people, 10 people? What are citizens that you can get so many people together, you'll never agree to anything.
Well, I guess when I hosted a couple streetscape planning meetings at my place, we had up to 23 people, ranging from handicapped to county leaders to aging people, So we had a large group, but whenever we came to the thing that was proposed and held by the city, we had maybe 9 or 10, and many of us found out about it that very day. Some by accident, some by phone calls to say, hey, this is going on. So there should be a process that ensures that people are aware. And I know it's hard to get public out to do things.
Oh, but
I get it.
my point was, can it be boiled down to a core group of people that would represent those
Sure, a committee
groups?
of some
Because
sort.
when you're talking about 20, 30 people and you're trying to make a decision, you're just wasting time. You can't get a decision when you got that many different people.
I would say with a good facilitator, that's not totally accurate.
I don't know. It's not my experience. But
Right.
can you at least boil it down? Is
We
that
sure
would be
could. I
possible?
think we could get a committee representative that answers to the business interests, the citizens, the residents, I should say, not the citizens.
Well, that's certainly something the board can consider on this. I believe what would be better for the city is rather than to have multiple meetings with whatever number of groups, if we have, as in the proposal, 2 very well publicized public meetings in which we get more than 23 people or 8 people or however many that is, and we make sure it's advertised fairly and well and in advance, I don't think it's in the best interest of the city to have 8 or 10 of these meetings over a long period of time, because just depending on who goes to those meetings. I think if they're well publicized, they're well-run meetings, and they're well representative of our citizenry, then I don't think we should have to expand that more than what's in the current agreement proposal. Alderman Blomker, then Alderman Booth.
Thank you. My understanding also on this amendment was that we did listen to many of the concerns already, and we didn't like the plan that was originally presented by the company. So this is part of the funding to allow them to redo it, taking in mind the recommendations from several of the meetings that you already had, several of the PowerPoint presentations that you guys put together. And I think that also is included with this as well, isn't it?
Well, certainly, and again, those ideas were presented to the board, and a final decision obviously has not been made, but we're just simply, the purpose for this is to allocate more engineering funds so that we can at least understand the numbers and the size of the engineering project. This by no means is any finalized version or anything like that.
Right. I'd have to say I'm one to support all these efforts, but our engineering firm, Alderman Booth, got paid a significant amount to come up with their designs and plans. We worked our butts off to come up with ones we did, and we did it as volunteers. So it seems right, it seems okay to make sure that our hired people go through a process similar to what we went through to come up with a design that works for the community. That's what maybe the core of what I'm getting at.
Okay, Alderman Blomker.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. One of the things we're trying to accomplish here is, as has been.
Up here, is that what you're suggesting?
I think the 3 minutes have been extended.
Yeah. So we'll let Mr. Becker or Mr. Blomker continue, and then we'll move on.
I think as this board has discussed several times, this is something that we're doing for generations, and we want to make sure we get it right. And as Alderman Booth already discussed, part of this was to encourage the firm to go back and look at some of the different concepts that were presented. And I know they need to add to the scope based on some of the things we requested that may become different phases of the project. But with that, I apologize if folks thought that this was not a priority, because this has been discussed, and as we went through our strategic plan, this is part of the strategic plan priorities. This is part of the priority-based budgeting discussions that we've had. So we do our best to get that information out, but know at times it only goes so far. But this is one of those things I believe we've got to do right. And if this board decides that, because I looked at the two meetings and felt that may not be right. But at the end of the day, we always have reserved the right to have a second amendment to come back and add additional meetings to it if it doesn't get it right. Like based on some of the discussions we've had and some of the direction we've given, I think we're much closer to that product that I think we're all looking for.
Very good. Any other discussion?
Aaron Brissett from the engineering company is here to answer any questions that
Yes.
you may have.
Yeah, I should mention that a representative from HDR is here to answer any questions. Alderman Chevalier.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much longer is all this going to take? Because, I was kind of anticipating, like members of the public have stated, they kind of wanted this, we were assuming this was going to be kicked off sooner, and I know that we went back to change some things. So I'm just wondering how much longer it's going to be until we can come up with a plan we can act on.
I can certainly answer that. I've actually prepared just 5 or 6 slides. If you'd like, I can go through that. And at the end, I do get into that, the schedule component of it. I'm Aaron Brissett with HDR, 3741 Northeast Troon Drive, Lee Summit, Missouri. It's always a pleasure to come and speak with you, Mayor and Board. I appreciate your time. Linda, if you'll go to the next slide. So this is the original project scope that we decided on back when we initiated this project. So we were going to start at 169. We were going to go past Bridge Street, basically to Commercial Street, and then we were going to go a block north and south on Bridge Street. So that was the original scope that we started looking at. And we always envisioned that as being phase 1 of the downtown streetscape project. I will say, as part of that original scope, we did have more than one public meeting. We had, I think, what Jeff was referring to, we did have a visioning workshop, and we did a project walkthrough where we all walked around downtown and looked at things, and then we had basically a charrette where we all sat down and people put their priorities and what they wanted to see, kind of, dreaming a little bit of what we wanted on that. We took those that vision plan, we came back, and we had a visioning workshop. And I think that's the one we had with the steering committee. And at that time, some discussion about mid-block crossings, lane widths. We talked about a gateway feature, and then we also talked about the plaza on Bridge Street. So we took some of those things back. We went back, we refined those concepts, and then we also had another meeting that was next door, actually, at the senior center, and we presented those to again to the general public at that time, and got feedback at that time as well. So there has been, I would say, 3 total public input meetings up to this point. If we want to have more, we're welcome to participate and facilitate additional meetings if that's what the board would like to see. Based on that last meeting, we had a work session with the board at the end of the June. If you go to the next slide, Linda. This was the direction we were given at that time, was to expand the project limits. We wanted to go across bridge, across the river, do enhancements to the bridge. So we basically went a block extra north. And then we also extended the project to the east past Liberty, which encompassed, basically it just about doubles the project, total square footage of it. And then based on the conceptual layouts we had for that gateway feature at the highway, we added that as well. So those were the components that were added in this contract amendment. So if you go to the next one. And then we also got direction that we wanted to pursue the Bridge Street Plaza area. The original plan was, we were going to replace all the sidewalks, put in, a decorative sidewalk with some sort of hardscaping, whether it be planters, which, based on the discussion, we removed most of the planters. That was the understanding we got out of those discussions, that the planters were not a high priority. So this is an older picture, but it's still kind of the same concept. It'd be a raised project that actually did full width replacement, not just sidewalk and curb and gutter, but we would do the full street crossing as well. So that was one component of this that wasn't in the original engineering design. Next slide. That's kind of just a picture of what that was kind of envisioned to be. Next slide. This was the conceptual gateway signage at the highway. So this would include engineering to design that structurally, also electrically for either some upward lighting, or there was even some discussion about having a message board on that if we wanted to go ahead and pursue that. This option has a spot where you could just hang banners on it, but if we want to do a message board, we can do that as part of this addendum as well. Next one. Then the other thing I just wanted to mention, as we go to the east on Main Street or DD, I guess it's Main Street now officially, right? It's no longer DD. There are some challenges that we had to consider when we expanded our scope. On the south side, there's some topography issues. You can see there's steps down to the curb, so if we're going to add sidewalk there, there's some significant challenges. We're probably going to have to put some retaining walls in or move that curb line in. So there is some significant engineering that's going to have to be done as part of that. Okay, next one. So this is kind of just a summary of what the original was versus the addendum. So the original project length was 2,100 linear feet. So now in the addendum, it's about an additional 2,030 feet. So it's pretty much almost a doubling of the project length. With those retaining walls, we anticipate there could be upwards of 30 easements we're going to have to get. Probably just temporary. We try and put that retaining wall on the property line so it wouldn't be in the right of way. And then we also added a Little Platte River Bridge enhancement. We wouldn't, obviously the bridge isn't getting replaced, but we're going to mount lighting or a decorative railing, those types of things on the bridge that would kind of carry that streetscape theme through kind of that northern gateway. And then the Bridge Street Plaza enhancements, the gateway signage. So you can kind of see the engineering fees. It does double the engineering fees. The project doubled, plus we did some enhancements on the original scope. So that's kind of how that fee came to be. You go to the next one. So one more. Okay, so here's our schedule. So we started this really about a year ago. So it's been a year, and it has taken quite a while to get to this point. And I want to say that we met at the end of June, and I somewhat remiss that we didn't get an addendum to you sooner. But I want to say we weren't just twiddling our thumbs. There were some things behind the scenes that were going on. One of those things is we did a separate authorization to replace the water line on Bridge Street all the way from the bridge to south of Summit Street up to the top of the hill where the old water tower was. So that was a big project. We wanted to do that all as one project. We felt we could get better numbers on the utility package if we could get that designed. And our goal is to get that out to bid and constructed this winter. So that'll be completely done. And then we'll complete the design of the streetscape this fall and bid it this winter with construction in really what is probably a more appropriate time, which is early spring, and get it through the spring and summer of 2018. Depending on how much, if the funds are available to the entire design, it's probably going to take a year because we're going to want to stage that, do it, just a block at a time. So we're not, obviously don't want to shut down town completely for a year. So we're going to have to segment it. Okay, you're going to build this, get the street and sidewalks back open. They might not be completely done with some of the hardscaping enhancements, but it's going to be usable. Everything's going to be back. So you're not in gravel and mud, that type of thing. And then they go on to the next block and keep moving on. So that's where we are as far as the construction and design schedule. With that, I'd welcome any additional questions you guys have.
Any questions?
Have you been kept advised about the status of the bridge replacement?
To the east on Old DD.
With the sidewalk, which side it's going to be on and all that?
I have not heard. MoDOT's, that's being designed by MoDOT currently, right? Last we talked, we wanted to coordinate some enhancements on that. I haven't had a conversation with that, but there's obviously still time if we're only going to put sidewalk.
Okay.
But, yeah, that's a good
But
point.
if they put the sidewalk on one side of that bridge or the other, would it significantly impact your design here?
Well, like I say, if we are going to put sidewalk on both sides of the street is kind of what we are envisioning at this time. Whether it's in our scope. Now, the bridge, if it's on one side, we'd probably have to do a crosswalk to get them, make sure anybody who's on the one side needs to get to the opposite side.
I'll remember, the scope on this only goes down to Liberty Street and the
Which is a
bridge,
couple-
and then the bridge is further down, so, and also MoDOT is also strongly suggested that we have a certain design on that bridge based on floodplain, et cetera, on which side of the bridge we're gonna have the walkway.
We're handling the connection of the bridge to this project separately.
Any
Yeah,
more
I think
questions?
our instructions were to get it past the park, so there's continuity between the park and downtown
Right.
area.
So down to Liberty Street. Other questions?
Yes.
Alderwoman, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Wilson first.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I agree.
That's dependent upon what that final, what this board agrees what that needs to look like, so.
Well, and that would also then go to the Bridge Street Bridge, where we can do that as much as possible. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing, we're not replacing that bridge, so we wouldn't have some of the same design, but we certainly would want to make it be somewhat similar. Bob?
I agree with Jeff that we have to get this right because it's going to be a long-term future thing that we don't want to get it wrong. But it's starting to feel like it's dragging. And, sooner or later we got to go with it. So you got an idea of about how long it's going to take for us to have something to approve?
Well, we got to get the engineering done so that they can tell us what we're going to do, and then we got to look at.
But no, I mean, well, this is the engineer, so.
Correct. And for our schedule, my commitment is that we will get the design done this fall and, come back to you in, November or thereabouts with a design for approval. And if you guys approve it at that time, then we will proceed to wrap up bid documents and get this ready to go out for advertisement, in like January.
Alderman Blomker?
Thank you. And as we kind of look at this, and we have some friends from Clay County with us here tonight, as we look at kind of our long-term plan of connecting downtown out to the lake, I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to understand what that price point looked like. My anticipation is that that's going to be cost prohibitive to do right away, but we'll certainly have the concept in place. So as we move forward for a long-term strategic goal, as we work with the county to get that path built out to the lake as well, that we can then work together and kind of get that all connected. But I think this is an important part of finding out how much it's going to cost, what it would look like, what are our challenges, and as you noted, there are several that we'll have to overcome if we're going to truly take it out to that point.
I agree. I think, and I think one of the things that we mentioned in one of the previous meetings is I think you need to have the overall master plan of what you want to do, but as far as what you construct in year one, we want to make sure we bite off a piece you guys can chew and do it right and not, spread it too thin and do kind of half of what you wanted to do over the whole thing rather than do all of what you want to do over one segment. And then once you got it done right and people can see it and say, oh, wow, yeah, this is great. I want it to go another block or another 2 blocks or whatever. I think it's going to it'll gain a lot of momentum that way.
Very good. Other discussion? Any other questions for Aaron? Aaron, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time tonight.
Other discussion on authorization number 79? Seeing none, all in favor of approving authorization number 79 for the downtown streetscape, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to item number 16. Alderman Arnold.
A move for discussion on a community center, on actually seating a committee for a community center. We have a lot of...
We need a second first.
I'll second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second by who? Alderman Blomker. Second by Alderman Blomker. Now,
Okay,
Alderman Arnold.
now I can do it. I think it's the opinion of a number of residents of this area that we need a community center with a pool. We have a high school swim team that has no pool. And we have people who take therapy, physical therapy, that use pools. They go to Platte City, go to the Y. I think it's time that we start looking at that very seriously. I think this needs to be a partnering arrangement with the school district, the hospital, and the city. I think when we talk about a committee, I think we need representatives from the high school athletic department, for example, St. Luke's therapy department, city staff, as well as residents familiar with the requirements of community center, including requirements for competitive level swimming pool for the use by the high school swim team to hosting events, which I think would thereby make this a destination, which has some advantage to the city as well. And I think one thing that I would like to stress, and this will be the last comment that I have, the committee members that get appointed to this need to be prepared to determine the design and the amenities of the center, the location of the center, the cost, and identify the financing as well. And I think you need to be prepared to follow it through and make it happen. I think on day one, their attitude has to be, we are going to have a community center someplace. Not just we're going to get some facts together and then we're going to find out, we can't afford it or something. It's got to happen. I mean, that's what this committee has to do. I'm through.
Very good. Other discussion? Alderwoman Wilson.
I do agree with Bob on a lot of the points you have made. I did serve on one of the committees previously of looking at a community center and a pool. And I read through the Parks Master Plan that was just passed in March of this year. I'm going to refer to that. We talked about park amenity priorities, and it said to address this continuing item, which is a community center and the pool. It is a recommendation of this plan that the city establish new amenities and realign existing amenities to correlate to the National Park and Rec Association standards related to amenities and population is shown below in a table. And in that table, it had a median population per facility was 24,645 for a rec community center alone. And for an indoor swimming pool, it was 30,000, and an outdoor swimming pool was 61,000. Further on, it said currently there are no nearby non-system amenities in the community center or aquatic center categories, but no such amenity is recommended until the current population triples. As such, this plan includes a specific recommendation that Smithville's focus its efforts in the parks amenities on matters other than a community center and aquatics facilities until such time as the population reaches no less than 80% of the recommended population that's in this table. And I think, Alderman Arnold, did you serve on that committee?
I actually chaired it, and I'm familiar with those statistics. However, I don't know that it takes into consideration the various methods that can be funded or that are available for funding it. And it's not just the city limits that would be involved here. You're talking about a wide area. You're also talking about a school district. So I think there's more stuff involved in getting a community center for Smithville than what we considered, the statistics we considered for that Parks Master Plan. So I'm not sure that I don't know that we can hold ourselves to that right now. I think the reason that we have a committee is to find this out and really study the situation.
Well, and certainly it is the perusal of this board as well as any, if the Parks Master Plan is to be amended, certainly the authority of this board to do that. And so certainly I think we could entertain that. Did you have a comment you want to make, Alderman Chevalier?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I know that's what the numbers show, 20,000 or whatever, but I mean, I still think that, it's worth it to make an attempt to look and see if this is something that the community can support and wants to support. And I think that we need to let them make that determination, not just a piece of paper.
Alderman Wilson.
I agree that the community has vocalized their support for it. So I think the challenge definitely would be for the new committee is the funding and the continuing funding of the facility.
Well, and certainly I think a key component to this too is to form a partnership with St. Luke's hospital system as well as with the school district, because I think we get buy-in and we get commitment from both those entities, and let them help present the ideas through this committee for how we're going to fund this, how it's going to be, the amenities we're going to have, where it's going to be located, et cetera. I believe personally that we went through this exercise about 4 years ago, was it? 3 or 4 years ago. And I certainly think it's certainly something we need to look at again. Alderman Blomberg.
I fully support the idea of getting the community together. There's been clear views from the community that this is something that they want to see done. I believe it's really important to partner with the school as well as with area healthcare providers and the full community to lay out our needs. What do we truly need? What do we truly want? And with that, get that lined out. I would also caution, it is at a rare occasion where a city runs a community center well and is able to maintain it. So I think one of those charges needs to be look at public-private partnerships, how those can be done, and look at the private entities who want to build swim and gym type activities. And there are several of those, and I know that several of those folks are very interested in our broad area as we see growth both in Smithville as well as south of our border at the Twin Creeks development. So I would charge that group to look at all options, really look hard at public-private partnerships, and but certainly laying out what our community needs are, because a wade-in pool is a little bit different than a competitive swimming pool. So
very much so. Very good. Other discussion. It sounds like then the consensus of the board is we move forward with creating a committee and chairing that committee to make sure that we include parties from private sector, the school district, the hospital, private, and the city. Is that the consensus of the board? I think so. Okay, Alderman Blomker.
I know it is largely up to your discretion to make this committee and form this committee, but I might suggest that maybe we allow the school 2 seats to fill and what have you to ensure that proper representation is there.
Absolutely. That would be a primary concern, to make sure that the school district, the hospital, and other members who are interested, private partners, private business partners, also have, and possibly philanthropic or charitable organizations, certainly would have a seat at the table. So, very good. We will move forward with that then. Other discussion on this topic? Very good. Last item, any new business from the floor to be brought up at future city meetings? Alderman Booth?
Yeah, I don't know if I can specify which, but I was thinking for the next work session, we could discuss the Parks Master Plan revision, at least that language in there about the community center. I'd like to see if we have a current 100-year flood study and see if it needs to be revised.
I think that's done as
by the federal government.
Yeah, that's done by the federal government.
But I mean,
and it has changed just a few years ago, that floodplain study.
To our benefit.
To our benefit, yes.
I think there'd be some people that disagree. Because my next thing during the work session is it's funny that the community, well, it's not funny, but the community that brought up the flooding concerns, I've had a business owner mention the same, Smithville Marine as an example, where they are noticing a lot more significant flooding at their business. So I'd be curious how some of these things that seem to be occurring more recently and how they compare to the floodplain study anyway. Also during the work session, I'd just like to discuss what our options are to try and get some markings on 169. basically reflectors. I know it's not our responsibility, but
Markings for what?
lane markings.
Oh, lane markings.
Actually, we can contact MoDOT. I don't know that we need to actually have it.
That's a very,
Do it tomorrow.
okay.
Unless you just
Okay.
want me to wait till Monday.
No,
Okay, we can do
sorry,
that.
yeah.
And you mean the reflective markings
Right, it's a very difficult street to navigate when it's wet and dark.
on, and again, 169?
169 right out in the main area. And then, again, during the next working session, another discussion about water rates, like we had previously. It is,
Yep.
okay.
Yes.
And for our next meeting, our Alderman meeting, if we could address the painting for lines on Second Creek. And Chief, is there any way you could mention crime stats at one of our next meetings?
Relative to just.
Well, I mean,
citywide,
you know, you got the paper out there, and they seem to think.
What? Crime stats for what, Alderman?
Well, just as they compare for what they were last year versus what they are this year, and perhaps where your biggest challenges are. Okay, thanks.
Alderman Blumker.
Corey kind of stole my thunder a little bit, but I would like to maybe at the work session discuss Second Creek, both the striping as well as if we have any update from the bridge work, knowing that we've got to make a decision and start informing folks on that.
Okay. Anything else? Alderwoman Wilson.
I have a couple items for future work sessions, not necessarily the very next one. I'd like to discuss emergency notification to residents and businesses during potential flooding or heavy rain events. What kind of plan do we have in that? The other item is the walking trail located west of Diamond Crest subdivision, the trail access point located in our subdivision, and just the trail itself.
Okay. Any others? Alderman Arnold.
For the next work session, which is next Monday, right? The 150th committee would like to have us discuss that. They have a time council they would like to locate someplace, and they would like to do it at the memorial, but I think it needs to be in a work session to get that resolved.
Outside the floodplain.
Huh?
Time capsule outside the floodplain, Bob?
Outside the floodplain.
Let's talk about it on Monday.
Okay, and
We'll have it clear.
as we discussed a little earlier, a discussion of the water quality at, not the next one, but the one after that, I believe that was going to work better.
Yes.
I'd also like a discussion of the issue at Stonebridge, and just to make sure we're all kind of aware of that. And you already got striping of Second Creek, so.
And again, one of the things that I would encourage you to do if we're going to talk about water quality and be serious about it, I really would suggest we take a look at the plant, and as it stands now, and the plant doesn't close at 5, we can work in on an evening. I would encourage you to do so.
I think what I'm pointing out there, or leading up to here, is it sounds like our intake is in the wrong spot, and maybe we need to look at moving it someplace else, and that may take an engineering study or something, I don't know, but I'm just basing that on what Jack said. So anyway, that's something to consider.
And it's not just that.
Pardon?
That is only a component of what we probably would need to look at.
Right.
And we can talk about that at the time.
Yeah, and then just one other thing, I did have somebody contact me, a business owner contact me about having some way to let them know when there's a major flood coming, and
That's what Alderman Wilson had just referenced.
I was thinking, what I'm talking about, at one time we had an automated phone system that we experimented around with. I don't know if we still got it or not. I don't know if that would be any way to put that in there or not. So.
I'm not sure we had a.
Well, this is when I think initially the trash contract came out, and you could get, it was an experiment I think you were trying, and this goes clear back to, I don't know, maybe October, November, December, someplace back in there, I thought. So, and that may just be something we can talk about.
Very good. Just a couple other items. I apologize. I forgot to, during my remarks, and this is a little bit out of order sequentially. I'm not out of order, but this event is. I do have a proclamation I need to read, and I'm going to share that with you, and then just a couple other items for the board before we go. Were there any other items to be brought up for future board meetings? Okay. Proclamation, whereas delegates to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia ratified the Constitution of the United States of America on September 17th in 1787. And whereas the Constitution serves as a primary foundation for this nation by establishing a federal government while recognizing the rights of the individual. And whereas this document is the longest lived written constitution in world history, with 2017 marking 230 years since its ratification. And whereas by joint resolution on August 2nd, 1956, Congress requested that the President proclaim the week beginning September 17th and ending September 23rd of each year as Constitution Week. And whereas the freedoms guaranteed to American citizens by the Constitution, whether by birth or naturalization, are celebrated annually during this period. Now therefore I, Brian Fulmer, Mayor of the City of Smithville, Clay County, Missouri, do hereby proclaim Sunday, September 17th through Saturday, September 23rd, 2017, as Constitution Week in the City of Smithville, and encourage all citizens to learn more about this most significant document providing direction for our nation and community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and affixed the official seal of the City of Smithville, Clay County, Missouri, this 5th day of September, 2017. So we will be celebrating Constitution Week here in Smithville. Two other items before we adjourn. By raise of hands, how many of you have been on a tour of the water plant? So we've got two.
Actually, not this one, the old one.
Oh, well, of our current water plant, we have one. As we discuss some of these issues, I would encourage everyone. I've been on several tours of the water plant, and I would encourage all the board members to take advantage of taking a tour of that and look at. Our staff will share with you some of the good things that are going on there, and some of the challenges. They'll explain, hopefully in a little better detail, some of the challenges we have during this time of year on water quality in general because of the turning of the lake at Smithville. And lastly, regarding the new business from the floor, a week ago I gave each of you a form to fill out to give some detail for as we add items to the agenda or topics of discussion to give us some more clarity and detail. And Melissa, if you'll hold yours up so that your fellow board members can see. We would like you to, if you could make sure that you can give some detail to what you want to do so that we give staff an opportunity to properly prepare for those agenda items. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second by Alderwoman Wilson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.